Your phone is lying to you, not in the way a glitchy app lies to you or the way a dead battery percentage lies to you, but in a deeper, more deliberate way. Right now, at this very moment, there is software running inside your Android device that you did not choose, did not request, and were never told about. It was placed there by the most powerful technology company in the world in the dead of night through a system update you thought was routine. It touches your encrypted messages, it analyzes your private images, and it will come back even after you delete it. Welcome to the new reality of smartphone ownership. Let us start with a simple exercise. Pick up your phone, open your settings, tap on apps. Find the option that says Show System Apps or Show System Processes. Now search for two names, Android System Safety Core and Android System Key Verifier. If you are running Android 9 or above, which covers the overwhelming majority of smartphones currently in use across the world, there is an extremely high probability that both of those applications are sitting on your device right now. You did not put them there. You were not asked. And until this very moment, there is a good chance you had absolutely no idea they existed. This is not speculation or a fringe theory circulating on obscure corners of the internet. This is documented, confirmed, and publicly acknowledged reality. Beginning with Google's November 2024 system update cycle, these two applications were silently deployed across Android devices through the Play Services infrastructure, the same deep system layer that keeps Google's core services running on your phone. Because Play Services operates at a level below your regular apps, it carries the ability to push changes to your device without going through the standard installation process that would normally trigger a notification or a consent screen. Google used that capability to install Safety Core and the Key Verifier on over 1 billion Android devices worldwide across every major brand, Samsung, Xiaomi, OnePlus, Oppo, and countless others, without sending a single user a single message saying it had done so. By the time the public discovered what had happened in February 2025, the damage to trust was already done. The discovery itself was almost accidental. Ordinary users, browsing through their settings for unrelated reasons, started noticing unfamiliar entries in their system app list. Tech-savvy individuals began posting screenshots, forums lit up with questions. And then Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic Games, a man who has spent years fighting legal battles against Apple and Google over control of digital platforms, posted publicly on X with a screenshot of Safety Core on his device and a single question directed at Google: "What is going on here?" That post spread across the internet within hours. Millions of people checked their phones. Millions of people found the same thing. And millions of people demanded an explanation from a company that had, until that moment, said absolutely nothing. What Google eventually said was carefully constructed. Safety Core, they explained, is an on-device artificial intelligence system designed to protect users from sensitive and explicit content inside Google Messages. When an image arrives in your messaging app, Safety Core's machine learning model analyzes it locally on your device. If the model determines the image contains nudity or sexually explicit material, it automatically blurs the image and presents a warning before allowing you to view it. The same check applies when sending. If you try to send an explicit image, the system flags it and asks you to confirm. Google emphasized the phrase "on device" repeatedly and deliberately, because the alternative, sending your photos to a remote server for analysis, would have been a far more obvious and immediate privacy violation. By keeping the scanning local, they could argue that your images never leave your phone, that no human at Google ever sees them, and that the entire process is private by design. But here's the part of that explanation that Google hoped you would not focus on too carefully. The question of whether your images leave your device is important. It is not, however, the only important question. The more fundamental question, the one that cuts to the heart of why this incident caused such a fierce reaction, is whether any company has the right to install software that scans your private communications on your personal device without first asking you whether you want that scanning to happen. The answer to that question does not change based on where the scanning occurs. On-device scanning is still scanning. A machine learning model running on your phone is still reading the content of your messages. The fact that the results stay local does not mean the process is neutral, and it certainly does not mean you consented to it. The anger that erupted across tech communities in February 2025 was not irrational, and it was not simply the reaction of people who misunderstood what Safety Core was doing. It was the reaction of people who understood exactly what had happened and found it unacceptable. What Google had done was make a decision on behalf of 1 billion people, a decision about what software would run on their private devices, touching their private communications, and then execute that decision without consultation, without transparency, and without any mechanism for users to decline before the fact. They announced the feature it would power in October 2024. They described the capability in their blog posts. They simply never mentioned that implementing it would require installing a hidden, persistent AI-powered scanning application on every eligible Android device on the planet. That omission was not accidental. Announcements that include app names and installation plans invite scrutiny. Announcements that describe only the user-facing feature and leave the infrastructure unmentioned avoid that scrutiny entirely. Now consider Android System Key Verifier, because its story adds another layer to this picture that is equally important and somewhat less discussed. The Key Verifier was deployed in the same November 2024 update wave as Safety Core, and it too arrived without notification, without an icon, and without any user-facing interface. Its stated purpose is different from Safety Core's. Rather than scanning images, it is designed to manage and verify the cryptographic keys that protect your end-to-end encrypted conversations. Here is why that matters technically. When you send a message through an encrypted app like WhatsApp, Signal, or Google Messages, that message is locked using a unique cryptographic key that only you and the recipient are supposed to hold. A sophisticated attacker could theoretically impersonate one party in a conversation by inserting a fake key into the exchange. This is what security professionals call a man-in-the-middle attack, and it is one of the primary vulnerabilities that end-to-end encryption systems are designed to prevent. The Key Verifier addresses this problem by allowing users to confirm each other's cryptographic identity through a QR code verification process. You scan your contact's code, they scan yours, and the system confirms that the keys you are each holding are genuine and have not been tampered with. Apps like Signal have had their own version of this capability for years. Their safety number system works on the same principle. What Google is attempting with the Key Verifier is to build this verification capability directly into the Android operating system at a system level, so that every messaging app can access it without building the infrastructure independently. According to security analysts at Kaspersky, who examined both applications in March 2025, the Key Verifier appears to function as described, with no AI analysis component and no evidence of data being transmitted to external servers improperly. Their assessment was that the application itself, in its current form, does not represent an active privacy threat. But, and this is a critical distinction, the absence of a current threat does not resolve the question of future capability or the legitimacy of the deployment method. The Key Verifier stores encryption keys. It is a system-level application with deep access to the cryptographic architecture of your messaging ecosystem. It was installed without consent, and Google has stated publicly that the contact key verification system it supports will be expanded over time to cover more messaging applications and more use cases. Each of those facts, taken individually, might be manageable. Taken together, they describe a piece of infrastructure that is growing in scope, was established without democratic input from the users it affects, and sits at a uniquely sensitive intersection of privacy and security on your device. What neither app's defenders have adequately answered is a question that privacy advocates have been raising since February 2025. What happens when the scope expands? Safety Core currently scans for nudity. Google has already announced plans to make its capabilities available to third-party developers beyond Google Messages. WhatsApp and Telegram, they suggest, will eventually be able to query Safety Core's AI engine to classify images in their own apps. That framing sounds helpful. More apps, better protection, broader safety net. But what is actually being described is a universal image classification layer, running at the system level beneath all your applications, that was built without your permission and is now being offered to any developer who wants to use it. The category of content it classifies today is explicit imagery. The architecture that performs that classification could be adapted to classify anything: legal documents, political content, religious material, communications between journalists and sources. The technology does not inherently know or care what it is analyzing. It does whatever it is trained and configured to do. Today, Google controls that configuration. Tomorrow, if regulations change, if governments apply pressure, if the business calculus shifts, who controls it then? This is not a hypothetical that requires conspiracy-level thinking to arrive at. It is a straightforward engineering observation. You do not build a scanning layer into 1 billion devices by accident, and you do not leave it there without a plan for what it will eventually do. The fact that Google's current stated intentions for Safety Core are relatively benign does not guarantee that the infrastructure they have built will remain limited to those intentions indefinitely. History suggests the opposite. Capabilities that are built tend to be used, and capabilities that exist at scale tend to expand. The question of what Safety Core and the Key Verifier will be doing on your phone in 3 years, or 5 years, or 10 years, is a question that no one at Google has answered because no one at Google has been asked to answer it publicly, under oath, with consequences for getting it wrong. Meanwhile, the practical situation for users who want to remove these applications reveals yet another dimension of this problem. You can uninstall Android System Key Verifier through standard settings on most devices. Navigate to Apps, find it in the System App list, and tap Uninstall or Disable, depending on what your device allows. For Safety Core, The process is more complicated because of a behavior that the XDA developers community documented extensively. Even after a successful uninstall, Google Play Services reinstalls the application automatically in the background without notifying you the next time it runs a background sync. This means that for the average user, someone without technical expertise, without a rooted phone, without developer tools, there's effectively no permanent way to remove an application that was placed on their device without permission. You can delete it. It comes back. You are, in the most literal sense, fighting against Google's infrastructure with your bare hands, and Google's infrastructure is considerably larger than yours. Developers in the open source community responded by creating dedicated tools to block the reinstallation, Magisk modules that require a rooted device to implement. But here is the final layer of irony that ties this entire story together with uncomfortable neatness. Google's Play Integrity API update, which rolled out in May 2025, makes rooting your phone increasingly costly. Under the updated Play Integrity system, apps can detect whether your device is rooted and refuse to function if it is. Banking applications, streaming services, and a growing list of everyday applications are implementing these checks, which means that rooting your phone to gain the control necessary to permanently remove Google's unauthorized installations may cost you access to the other applications your daily life depends on. Google has, in effect, created a situation where the most reliable tools for resisting their silent installations are the same tools they are systematically making more expensive to use. That is not an accident. That is architecture. And the architecture tells you something important about the power relationship between you and the company whose software runs on your phone. Your device is, legally and technically, yours. But the operating system it runs gives Google capabilities over it that you never explicitly agreed to and cannot easily reverse. The installations happen silently. The reinstallations happen automatically. The tools to stop them are being progressively disabled. And the features being built on top of this invisible infrastructure are expanding in scope with every update cycle. At some point, the question of whether any individual app is harmful becomes less important than the question of what kind of relationship you have with the platform you depend on, and whether that relationship resembles ownership or tenancy. Because if Google can install what it wants, when it wants, on your device, and can ensure it stays there even after you try to remove it, then the honest answer to the question of who owns your phone is not as simple as it used to be. In the next application they decide to install silently, whatever it scans, whatever it stores, whatever it analyzes, will not ask you either.